This content is brought to you by Uphold, which makes crypto investing easy. I've been a user of Uphold since 2017. They're one of my go-to exchanges. You can buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies on Uphold. You can also trade precious metals and equities. They have 10 plus million users, 250 plus cryptocurrencies, and they're available in 150 countries. As with all exchanges, you can buy and sell on them, but I highly recommend you custody your own crypto. Not your keys, not your coins. If you'd like to learn more about Uphold, please visit the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Fred Rispoli, or I should say attorney Fred Rispoli, who's the founder of HODL Law. Fred, great to have you on.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Good morning. I only wish that I could hear the intro music on this one, but I'll have to wait till the finished product.
For sure. And, you're on the West Coast. I appreciate you getting up early for this. We got lots to talk about. We got, a lot of things that you guys are working on, which are super important for the crypto industry. But first, let's start with your background. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
All right, I'll run through it quickly. I was actually born in Detroit, and then I grew up in Ohio till I was like 9 or 10. And then I moved down to the west coast of Florida, where I find that to be my own paradise. I want to get back to one day. So I'm just going to keep it nebulous because I don't want too many people finding out about this place. Then I went to school in Atlanta at Emory. I was a teacher actually for a little bit, a seventh grade science teacher in South Central LA. Went to law school at Arizona State. I did law at a big law firm in Arizona for a while, kind of helping large mega national corporations pull a couple over on the little guys. Wasn't making me feel too happy. And so then I went into fighting for people's rights, did a lot of personal injury, which was mainly nursing home abuse, medical malpractice stuff. And then I moved out to California. So I'm in Southern Cal right now. And over the last probably 3 years, I got into crypto and the last 2 years really into it, getting a little burnt out from seeing all the death and destruction in my other type of practice. So decided to start doing a little more crypto law, and that's how HODL Law was born.
Wow. What made you want to get into law or the legal field in the first place? Did something inspire you? What was that?
Well, I was a teacher before I went to law school, and I was in a real tough school district in a real tough part of LA, and I really admire the teachers who can have that mentality of, if I can make one difference in one kid's life, that's good for me. And I just wasn't that type of person. I was just looking at the odds that are stacked up against these kids, and I felt like I didn't have a purpose and wasn't getting through or getting the goals that I wanted. And, with the law, you make a lot more money as a teacher. I'm going to put that right out there. But
Sure.
with the law, a particular case can just change the whole course of the country. I mean, think about Brown versus Board of Education. Think about Howie. You can make such a difference as a lawyer in our country, which is on the rule of law, that was kind of the direction I wanted to go. And I love competing. I was a tennis player. I love kind of one-on-one competition and arguing. So it fit my personality.
Awesome. What was your first encounter with Bitcoin and crypto, and what was your aha moment?
There were two different moments. I always knew about Bitcoin pretty much when it came out, but as kind of just a passing interest. I did not buy any Bitcoin at the beginning, and I vividly remember when it went up to 600 once, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I really missed the boat on that one." You'd be a fool to invest at these numbers, and then obviously, I just watched it go up and up. And in January 2018. A acquaintance who's now a good buddy, just probably with a lot of people's story, they know this, pulled me aside, started talking about crypto. Bitcoin had just went from 20K and was plummeting. I was telling him what a fool he was, but then he just had answers to everything. And he said, it's not just Bitcoin, there's Ethereum, this thing Cardano, XRP, EOS. Those were the ones that at the beginning I still have many of those except for one, but I just started getting into it at that point, and that's when it really took off for me.
Oh, wow. And then, of course, you told the story of how you ended up founding Hodl Law, where now you're specifically working with crypto companies and blockchain companies.
Yeah, so I do a lot of digital asset companies will come up and ask for some assistance. A lot of the discussions now are what's security, what isn't a security, how can I structure my business? Do I need to go out of the country? On the company side, a lot of individuals will ask, hey, this exchange stole from me, or, I lost my crypto here, or somebody hacked me. Also working with a lot of creators on doing the intellectual property side of like NFTs and putting IP onto NFTs. So that's really cool and fascinating. It's just a whole different world than what I'm used to, and something that gets me going every day. So I'm very lucky.
Well, I may need to talk to you about NFTs and IP because I plan to launch an NFT collection. It's going to have utility, so it's not just going to be artwork, but I believe in utility. So I'll need to talk to you about that offline.
All right, let's do it. Discount rate for you, Tony.
Awesome, awesome. So let's get into what's happening in the market. Boy, is it a mess with the SEC and the other government agencies. Let's start with the SEC Ripple lawsuit. I'd love to get your thoughts on that and what you think the outcome will be. We may hear from the judge very soon.
Yeah, I was telling people on a spaces I did over the weekend that I have a premonition this is coming out this week. And so I mean it's just all pure feelings in my gut. So don't anybody hold me that. But it should be coming out pretty soon, the summary judgment motion, in a nutshell, so I'm not too repetitive. I think that the summary judgment ruling, and just again to remind everybody, all the non-lawyers, summary judgment is no material facts in dispute. And so it's always hard to win on summary judgment because usually people are very in dispute in a lawsuit about what the facts are. And so, everybody needs to know that. And I think the judge is going to say, listen, SEC, you're barely making your case here that it can go to trial in the terms of XRP being sold as a security from Ripple. I really think you're pushing it because there's no written contract, there's no clear commonality, but maybe a jury will find otherwise. I do think she's going to say, listen, XRP, by the way, is not a security. I read all these Amici briefs. It's clear that there's a lot of other use cases. And then SEC, when you say the whole secondary market's a security, and here's where I think it's a little nuanced, but it's still really good, even though it's not what I would want. But I think she's going to say, I'm not going to rule that every transaction on the secondary market is not a security. However, SEC, you have absolutely failed in your burden to prove that these secondary sales by other people outside of Ripple are securities. And so that part of your case is over, which will give the exchanges with a spine more of a legal stand-in to list XRP. But then I think the case will go to trial for that. And then if it's limited in that way, I think the SEC will say, there's so much else we have to do and so many other people we need to sue that if this is all we're going to get out of Ripple at trial, let's get our money from them and move on.
So do you believe that, Ripple will have to pay some sort of fine for maybe what took place in, let's say, 2013 to 2015? But to your point, secondary market sales are not all securities, and exchanges can start relisting.
Yeah, I think what they'll do is after we get a little more clarity from the judge on summary judgment, then if it's the way I say, if it's more pro SEC, then it'll be a different outcome. But if it's in line with my prediction, I think they'll say, all right, well, we've lost all of this. we want some money from you, Ripple. Ripple will say, well, you better write this in our settlement agreement because, this is done. This is it. We're not going to appeal in. I mean, that's what the settlement is. You waive all your rights to appeal. And so I don't think there's a good legal basis to say 2013 to 2015, this wasn't a security, here it was. But in a settlement, you can make all that up and just say that and put it on the piece of paper and then have the judge sign off on it. So that's that's my base case, and that's what I really hope happens, because as we've brought up to a couple people, all the other attorneys, like, I mean, this is another 3-4 years if you want to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, boy, I hope it doesn't go that direction. So a lot of people have eyes on this lawsuit and because of the implications. And if Ripple is able to come out with a victory here, do you believe other crypto assets and projects in the industry, even companies, could use some of the bits and pieces of this case towards their defense?
They definitely can, but what's going to happen is if the SEC wins, they will say, this is like every single crypto out there, and therefore, Library, Ripple, all of you guys fall into this category. If they lose, and remember, we know, as John Deaton said, transactional only, shameless. That's how they're running their litigation department now. If they lose, they will say, well, we might as well sue another 10 crypto companies because we got to get the momentum back. And all those companies will say, we're just like XRP in this Ripple case. And they'll be like, no, 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 that was very unique to XRP. Look how different it is. It'll be hilarious because then the SEC will totally switch, adopt all of Ripple's arguments as to why they were so different. And they'll be like, yeah, you're a totally different company. So they'll continue their push against other people, but hopefully at that point XRP is in the clear. Well, I shouldn't say hopefully. I want XRP to be in the clear, but I'm not one of those people that's like, now everybody else can just fend for themselves. I mean, I do want a lot of digital assets to be in the clear, but I don't think we're just absent legislation. It's who does the SEC want to sue next?
For sure. So related to the Ripple lawsuit, and there's many layers to this onion to peel back here. In like 2018, you had Bill Hinman give the speech that Ethereum is not a security. And Jay Clayton, the chair at that time, blessed it. He went around saying, look at what we put out here, and you should read Bill Hinman's speech and yada, yada. That is part of this case where Bill Hinman's communications, documents, and so forth are being discussed. And I know the SEC doesn't want those documents and emails and so forth to see the light of day. And you also have a case against the SEC asking for clarity on Ethereum if it's a security, because Commissioner Gensler, or I should say Chair Gensler, has not continued those statements or reiterate those statements that Ethereum is not a security. I know it's like a mess and I said a lot there, but I would love to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so you brought up this lawsuit that we've got, HODL Law. And I think what's important about this one, and this is also to make me feel better about myself, this is a really big case, and we filed it because, one, HODL Law uses a lot of digital assets. We help clients with their digital assets. So, from time to time, we have to custody digital assets for them. We use digital assets to transact on the network, either on behalf of clients or on behalf of ourselves. HODL Law has purchased using ERC, we're using Ethereum and ERC20 tokens to get little plots of land in various metaverses. And I say all that, and then, as part of the operating account, our firm also, in addition to USD, we have various digital assets. So I say all that because our firm, HODL Law, filed a lawsuit against the SEC. It's in Southern District of California. And what we said, it's a declaratory action. That's a type of lawsuit. And we said, hey, Your Honor, we want you to declare Ethereum is not a security. And we sued the SEC because we said, hey, these are the people who decide or who allege what's a security and what's not a security. They won't tell us if Ethereum's a security. Look what Bill Hinman, look what Jay Clayton said, but look what this other guy, Gary Gensler, said that's the opposite. We don't know what to do, and we don't want to get, screwed like Wahi in the Coinbase case, like Library, like Ripple. So let's do this. And it put the SEC in a bind because, they could have either said, Rispoli, let's drop this thing. Obviously, Ethereum's not a security. I mean, remember when Billy said it, and they didn't do that, and they also didn't say no, it's definitely a security directly. They decided to file a motion to dismiss for lack of standing, which basically means, hey, judge, don't even listen to this claim. HODL law says they use these coins and this and that, but they're trying to basically force us to make a decision, and it's not fair. We're not ready yet. But in their pleadings, they said, we're not ready to tell you what we think about Ethereum, which, forced their hand to basically say, we think it's a security. They do think it's a security. They're just biding their time to figure out how to go after it. And I'd like to think, because I filed this thing back in November of last year, the federal government's got a longer time to answer complaints than the average person. I'd like to take a little bit of credit for just a little bit of Operation Choke Point 2.0, because I think the people at the SEC were like, this, we filed an amicus brief, our firm, on behalf of Reaper Financial in the Ripple case. I've been making a lot of noise trying to get people involved to go after the SEC on this front. And I think they realize that, hey, these things are going to start happening. We got to start moving on our end. So hopefully I answered what that was on the on our Ethereum declaration action.
Yeah, no, I think I'm appreciative of that, and I think it's super important because that is a big catalyst, just given the history with the SEC and what they're trying to do now, and with the Ripple case as well, and just the market being in limbo. And Chair Gensler, once again, refusing to echo the statements of his predecessors. So I'm certainly appreciative of it. And I hope the crypto community at large recognizes what you're trying to do, because this is a significant item as well.
Well, thank you. And you brought up a couple of good points on a couple of interviews on, a lot of the social media posts you do, which is, again, it's disappointing to me personally, disappointing, not you, but what we've had in the crypto community, which is, you've said, why doesn't everybody get together and legally attack the SEC? And I think, the answer there is, we're all in it for ourselves. And I'm talking about these huge companies because, even before I was doing crypto law, I've sued so many gigantic corporations. And I just, want to tell people, you can say, hey, Fred's biased, he's on the personal injury side. There's probably some truth to that. I'm definitely biased towards the individual and safety and fairness. But when you have these huge corporations, there's good people obviously there, but it just always ends up happening that the more and more people in a company, the whole mission gets twisted into more profit. How does everybody get a little more piece of the action? And then these decisions that, in hindsight are like, this was a terrible idea. It's because you find emails, from certain directors or VPs that say, if we do it this way, we can make an extra $10 on every single customer. We don't tell them about this fee. And that's just how these corporations think. And they were like, we don't want to be the first one to do anything. And they didn't want to give money to certain associations, and certain crypto associations weren't, in it for all of the crypto. They're only in it for a few coins. And nobody did this declaratory action, which I'm doing right now with Ethereum. And even now, I'm not going to name anybody right now, but on Twitter, there's a lot of people that are like, let's get together and fight the SEC. Let's raise money. Let's do this. And, I'm privately messaging these people saying, I've got a great case going on right now. It can be replicated as much as you want for the 10,000 cryptos we have. We get some more funds in here. We can, do this on a national scale and just swarm the SEC with lawsuits until there's, real action. And it's crickets, Tony. It's crickets out there. So, people, a lot of people talk a big game. Not a lot of people do anything.
Yeah, and man, I'm hoping there's a wake up call for some of these companies, because the SEC and Gary Gensler, they're just going to keep picking at these companies. And you just had Kraken and their stuff, and they settled. Now Coinbase got a Wells notice, so I don't know what will be the catalyst for these companies to come together if they ever do. Speaking of Coinbase, so I recently interviewed Paul Grewal, Chief Legal Officer at Coinbase. We talked a lot about the SEC Ripple lawsuit and much more. One of the things that were brought up, I asked him, hey, where's the Flare token distribution to the XRP holders, which Coinbase publicly said they would distribute. You also have a lawsuit against Coinbase regarding this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we've got a class action going against Coinbase, Coinbase Global, and Mr. Armstrong himself. It's in the Northern District of California. I got a little worried when I was watching your interview because I did not know that Paul was a federal magistrate judge in the Northern District. And then he also, I think, brought up a book he was reading, was written by, he was like, my friend, this district court judge, Judge Alsup up there. And I'm like, oh gosh, we actually don't have a district judge assigned, but I guess the good news is that if we do get that judge assigned, I might move to strike him just based on that fact alone, but we'll see how it goes. But we're doing the class action, and it's, just as you explained, hey, Coinbase said, we're participating in this airdrop. They didn't say they were limiting participation in any way, shape, or form, which includes Songbird. And, then they didn't give everybody their tokens, even though they took them and have control of them right now. And they're sitting in their wallets right now. That's straight up negligent misrepresentation 101 under California law. And so, what I want to say, a little bit of an aside, is how important every individual that's watching this. I mean, you have so much power that you don't use. And if you did start using it, we could really change this, quickly. And if that's contacting your congressman, you got to do it in the right way, though, because, sometimes calling and emails just aren't enough. But as soon as most class actions start out by a plaintiff getting screwed over, an attorney getting screwed over somehow, and they get really upset about it. And then they're like, this should be a class action because of the way I got screwed over. And then, so that's usually how they start. And, I got screwed over and didn't get my Songbird. I was really pissed. I started looking into it, and I can't, do the lawsuit myself. So I was looking for people who wanted to be a lead plaintiff, that first name on the lawsuit. And I talked to a lot of people. A lot of people were upset, but we got very close in the process. And at the very beginning, a lot of people were like, I don't want to be the lead. I'm a little concerned, for a variety of different reasons. They just didn't want to go forward. And it took a bit of time to find someone willing to do that. And right now our lead plaintiff is Dallas Woody. A couple other people are going to join in. And, he just deserves mad props for being willing to do that, because what's going to happen in that case, to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it, is, and this is where I'm disappointed with Coinbase and where it really bothers me when they say, oh, we got the Wells notice. It's an attack on crypto. Unite around us. For a lot of reasons, especially where they were when Ripple, Library, all of them got sued. Coinbase is not going to, well, I don't think they are, because we've been, engaging in some preliminary conversations, but we would love to settle this case. Everybody get their Songbird and Flare, and we can all move on. And, we can even talk around the edges of, maybe not everybody gets their full Songbird and Flare. We give that up to get it done here. But what Coinbase is likely going to do is say, we don't owe you anything. We're going to move to compel arbitration. If you ever look, if anybody ever read their terms of service, they're forced to click through, buried in the fine print, that nobody even understands, and including me as a lawyer. There's these arbitration agreements which say you have to arbitrate with us, and that's just private court where we don't go before a judge, we go somewhere else, and it's much more expensive, and it's usually tilted against the consumer in favor of the corporation. And Coinbase is going to try, because they've done it in almost every other case. Hey, we got to arbitrate this, because they want to keep things under the radar. And a lot of people have called in and talked to me and said, we tried to get our songbird, and Coinbase basically told us, forget you, in polite terms, when you started asking about where's my songbird and flare. And they've already admitted that that your assets are yours. They're not Coinbase's. So they'll probably move to compel arbitration, then they'll move to dismiss, and then they'll try and do anything they can to avoid, doing the right thing, which I'll always be the first one to say, you change your mind. You're gonna give everybody their songbird back. Great. I'm really proud of you. Thank you. But until that happens, it's a great disappointment that this company that pioneered digital assets and what they embody would be acting this way when it comes to their own customers' client funds.
Fred, well, why do you think that is? Like, is there some sort of risk? Are they afraid of something? Is it because it's related to XRP? Well, I don't understand, because it's not just that. Okay, it's only for the people who participate in the snapshot. So I'm actually like kind of confused. They publicly said they're gonna distribute. So what's the holdup?
Well, typically in every single case, no matter we're talking about digital assets, medical billing, putting different ingredients in products that they sell out, fees, it's greed. It comes down to greed. Coinbase does say in their terms of service generally that, hey, we don't do airdrops. And now that makes sense, because there's, people can airdrop anything, whatever. And so, I think in their terms of service, they typically say that. However, when you change those terms, and when you make a new promise, like with Flare, that's why we're talking about the Flare airdrop, is because they did something different. They said on their website, publicly, Twitter, social media, everywhere, we are going to do this. So that fundamentally changed what the original bargain was. And, they have to participate. But when they realized, or when they knew from the beginning, that songbird was going to have a decent value, somebody in the legal department can be like, well, we don't have to give these guys anything. Look at our terms of service. We're good. Let them sue us if they're going to do something. Now we've got, that, 30, 40, $50 million worth of songbird that we can distribute to everybody. We can sell it. Now we can give everybody a higher bonus. So, it's a level of greed that, always takes over a corporation usually. And then two, these Coinbase became very anti-XRP once the lawsuit was filed. Maybe even before then. It took them a really long time to list it. And, I think there's probably a little sliver of that is, well, we already delisted XRP. Songbird and Flare are associated with XRP. So we're not going to touch that either. Because it doesn't make sense. I mean, Kraken, Uphold, those guys already distributed everything. Even Binance US, gave out, I think at least they gave out the songbird. I forget where they are on Flare, if they've dropped it or not. I mean, we're coming for everybody, so we're just doing Coinbase first. And no, after the lawsuit was dropped, I think a couple of exchanges. Hopefully, I'd like to think we can get a little credit for that, because after our lawsuit was dropped, I think I can't remember, but a few exchanges after that then got their Flare out. But I think it's just greed, and I think that's the big part, and then I think the XRP issue is kind of the smaller part.
So on that note, we're seeing, I guess maybe for the first time in history, the crowdsourcing of asset holders playing a factor in influencing markets, even the legal case with the XRP SEC Ripple lawsuit. What are your thoughts on that dynamic and like John Deaton representing was it 75,000 plus XRP holders?
That just goes back to what I said a few minutes earlier, which is you have everybody watching, you have so much power that you are not using. One of the reasons, I came onto the scene is when I got so upset with that FOIA request that came out that showed, how corrupt Bill Hinman was in these dealings with getting that ETH pass that, I sued him and Clayton. And, it just, that suit is tabled for now because we want to kind of figure out how Ripple SEC plays out. But, that all came from everybody, getting super pissed off and then John leading the charge on that front. On Coinbase, so many people on the Coinbase Songbird Flare, so many people, when you saw how much they were getting screwed, I was like, I got screwed just like all these people. We're going to do this. People have been sending in that are, interested in the class, information on how Coinbase, is like, we're not doing, S for any of you guys, you're not getting anything back. All the, I've seen so much information that I use as evidence in my Ethereum declaratory action case, because of what people have. I mean, just so you know, on Twitter, a lot of times I'm bookmarking all your tweets, everybody's tweets, and I got my folders that go into a Hinman Clayton case, Ethereum deck action case. Like those are the folders on my Twitter. It's like Westlaw is a lot of the way lawyers do legal research. You have your folders for cases on like torts, arbitration, contract law. That's how my Twitter looks now, with all my tweets of what really people have been sending. So, they go into. I don't know if you can tell if your tweet is bookmarked by someone else, but just a lot of people out there. I'm looking at what you're doing, and one thing. Bill Belisarius, the Australian lawyer, had tweeted something once, bookmarked it, and that went into our Ripple Reaper amicus brief. So I say that because the evidence is great, but now, between now and 2024, but especially starting now, I think I want to tell everybody, legislation is the best way to do this in the US. You got to get in your congressperson's face, not literally, but you got to be annoying. That's how they pay attention, is if you're annoying. Well, and if you pay them money, if you give them money, and if you're annoying about it. It's a sliding scale. The less money you're going to give, the more annoying you have to be. And I just want to, in 2022, I tried to get a bunch of people excited about a challenger in our district. And, it didn't really go too well. Like, I was trying to get more people to follow him, trying to get it up. But here's where I failed. I didn't start doing that till about a week or two, maybe 3 before the election. I had a huge trial in September, a med mal trial. And I was like, I got to do this. I made up all my excuses too. Why I'm too busy to do this, and I didn't get into it or try to affect things until 2-3 weeks before the election. It's too late. So I'm going to do a better job this cycle, and if we all do a much better job, again, we can. Right now, legislation's far off. I think it's a year or 2 off, but that can change on a dime if everybody can band together and say, I don't care, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, but you have to say, I'm just going to be a crypto issue person right now. I'm not going to let that other stuff creep in. And if we do that, then we can make a big difference.
For sure. There's another big case that's happening. It's Grayscale versus the SEC over a Bitcoin spot ETF. I'd love to get your thoughts on that and what you think the outcome would be.
I think that Grayscale is going to win that one. And I don't know exactly how the court's going to write the ruling, but, basically I think what's going to happen is the SEC is going to have the option of, well, now do we go back and say Bitcoin futures need to be taken off the table since we really don't want that Bitcoin spot ETF? Um, I think that's not going to happen because it's just so bizarre for them to have to go and say, no, no more Bitcoin futures now either. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to say, all right, they're going to kick it. The court will kick it back down to the SEC, say you were arbitrary and capricious in denying this. You can't do that again. Now evaluate the application with that in mind. And then the SEC can, at minimum, use that and delay the process, by another 6 months to a year. And then, maybe they could even force, they come up with some new thing and force Grayscale to sue again. So I think it'll be a win in the courts, but then I think the SEC is going to delay implementation. I could be wrong because, the SEC has come out a lot of times and said Bitcoin's not a security. And they might just say, all right, screw it. We got so much other stuff doing. We'll do the spot Bitcoin ETF. I think they'll probably pull up Grayscales and be like, oh, remember all those other ones from all the bigger names that we denied? Let's grant those at the same time we grant Grayscale.
I was about to say that they'll probably approve maybe Van X and whoever else. Yeah, some of these legacy names. But in a similar fashion, could these Bitcoin spot ETF applicants also group together and sue the SEC? I had spoken to Commissioner Joe Grunfest, former commissioner, SEC commissioner, and he was like, yeah, all these applicants can sue the SEC. It would probably be a good idea for him to come together and sue all together, right? But to your point earlier, everybody's in it for themselves for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So they could group together. And the sad thing is, the oil company, teachers unions, oil companies, teachers unions, environmental groups, they all have these trade associations that have, in our law, in our jurisprudence, standing to file these types of lawsuits. And, you don't have to take as much of the burden, and you don't have to pay as much as the lawyer fees. And there's some compromise involved because everybody kind of has to agree, all right, we're going to give it to this association is going to use this mega law firm, and this is what we're going to do. So there's some compromise that takes place when you all kind of let that happen. And for whatever reason, again, probably power, greed, we don't want to be the first ones, we don't want our names associated with this group too much, they're not doing it. I mean, you could even do it individually.
Sure.
You could even call up HODL Law and say, why don't you sue all these people and we confront your legal fees on all this? I can handle a few cases, but if we wanted to do a nationwide swarm on the SEC for all, pick a crypto and we can do it. You would need to have some type of, funding that goes on there, and they just don't want to do it. And that goes back to a problem I had with Ripple from the very beginning, which is, why didn't they buy off a couple of Congress people, legally, of course,
sure,
the way everybody does it? Why didn't that happen? They had the money to do it, and not just them, like Coinbase had the money to do that. Kraken had the money to do that. They could have pooled their money and done that, and this whole thing could have been shorted out. So it's a question that eventually we might find out when the movies are made.
Despite all the headwinds we're facing, we continue to see the market is growing, price is growing and so forth, but adoption. You just recently NASDAQ confirmed, hey, we're still going to move ahead and launch our crypto custody by the end of Q2. Last year, BlackRock, BNY Mellon, Fidelity just recently launched their full crypto trading. We still see adoption happening. Where do you see the market in 5 years, despite these headwinds we're facing now?
I think it's going to keep building and growing, and it's going to survive. I think I put that at an 80% chance. I'm a believer so far just price wise in the 4-year, Bitcoin cycles. That always seems to happen. And I'm not going to get greedy like I did last cycle, where I, was like, I didn't do this to make a couple million. I did this to make 10 million, 20 million. And then I
We've
watched
all been there.
everything. I
Yeah.
watched everything. I didn't sell at the top. I watched everything go down. It's going back up. This is just a dip. And then I just wrote everything back down. But I'm not going to do it again this time. But, I think it'll continue to grow with, I think, and I think from the pro crypto community, we have to be a little more realistic in this sense, which is, when people say crypto is a scam and it doesn't do anything, if you're going by a majority of the projects, that's actually a correct statement. We
Sure.
have to understand that we all know about the top 10, top 20, top 100 projects that have meaning, but the vast majority of cryptos are projects that may have good intentions but are going nowhere, are dead coins, or are outright scams. And so you got to realize that when you're explaining that to people and say, yeah, like a lot of this stuff is meaningless. But there are the Amazons, Googles, Facebooks out there, and so we've got, when we talk about like, the artist stuff with NFTs, or the community coins, that you're going to be able to use, sending money, supply chain, store of value, smart contracts, gaming, that's all just going to go and exponentially increase. And so it will happen. It's already happening all over the world, and I would just say, another thing for the people in the US to remember is that, especially when we're talking about value coins, digital assets that transfer value, the US is, I just can't see a reason why they would ever be pro crypto in that sense, because if you can transfer value quickly and in and out of everything, by definition, fiat money is going to become less and less useful. And, well, what's the biggest, most important piece of fiat is the US dollar. That's an underpinning of our American standard of living. We haven't done a very good job with shepherding, the weight and responsibility with that US dollar. And really, I think crypto just weakens all fiats, and that's that's a big loss for the US if they don't figure out another way around it. So they're just naturally going to try and fight that.
For sure. Well, I guess, a big part of that fight is the creation of CBDCs and tokenizing fiat on the blockchain. I guess is their counteraction to that.
Yeah, I mean, CBDCs are coming because it's just such a great way to control the population. At first, everyone's going to love it because you push it to the person's phone and you got it. And then, eventually it's going to be negative interest rates. And, and then eventually it's going to be, well, if you don't spend this in 2 weeks, you don't have it. Then it's going to be, well, these places you can't spend it because they're not sufficiently patriotic enough. And then it's going to be, hey, Tony, you actually can't have this money right now because you're not sufficiently patriotic.
Mm-hmm.
And, is that 5 years, 10 years down the road? Is it a year or two? I mean, it all depends on how quickly things spiral out of control.
For sure. All right, I got some wrap up questions here for you. If you can create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
Geez. I would probably do one where you could basically have whatever superpower you wanted. Because if we're talking about the metaverse, I like to go all Ready Player One. You get
Sure.
your own avatar, can do whatever you want as you move between worlds. And then, you can actually, it's kind of like, it's just like Ready Player One, where you're put in, you can feel everything, and you can go to Tony's Thinking Crypto Metaverse. You can hop by if you get too virtually drunk to Hodl Law's place, especially if you get a virtual, DUI or someone's hassling you. I'll protect you in the virtual world.
I got some rapid fire questions here for you. Favorite food?
Generally tacos, more specifically taco ardiente tacos. I don't know if anybody's gonna know where that is, but best tacos ever.
Favorite musician or band?
I do. I'm a big genre person. So, like, my favorite genre of music is jam bands. I love Fish. And then right after that is hip hop. And I'm on a Australian hip hop kick as of late. Love Hilltop Hoods. Love Bliss and Esso to all my Aussies out there who know what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Favorite movie?
Geez, I would say my favorite movie is well, that's not even a tough one. Happy Gilmore.
Favorite book?
I would say fiction. My favorite book is Sphere by Michael Crichton. And then I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan. And if anybody ever wants to read an amazing biography, it's Theodore Rex by Edmund Morris.
Mm. And when you're not at Hodl Law, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
I like to build miniature ships in bottles.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just kidding on that one. That's I feel like that's the go-to if you're ever thinking of what's a stereotypical hobby. No,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I like playing tennis, and then if it's not a sport, I'm a big hip hop guy. I love writing and perfecting my hip hop abilities.
Very cool. Fred, pleasure chatting with you, and I appreciate what you're doing on behalf of the crypto industry. And folks, I will put links to Hodl Law in the description of the podcast and video. You can go check it out. But thank you so much, Fred.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thank you.